Okay, welcome to, I think, what is the 18th installment of Exceptional Circumstances for Exceptional Children. I am your host tonight, Rebecca Muller. I am so thrilled to be having these discussions with educators from around the country and the world. And I encourage you to become a part of the community through it, whether it be Facebook or just through email. There will be a opportunity for us to share our information, and we encourage you to stay in touch as we all navigate, accommodate, and advocate ourselves through this very trying year of academics. Tonight, as you are all aware of, we are talking about the co-teaching magic. We are here with Emily Williamson of Academic Solutions, who has a rich background as a teacher in administration and is currently a consultant in the Massachusetts area. So I will allow her to tell a little bit more about herself, and let's get started.
Um, Hi, everybody. First, I wanted to ask, is there a way to view everybody? I don't see.
Yeah, if you go to the topic view and then go to the gallery view in
Uh,
Zoom,
okay,
that way you can kind of see everybody as a big group.
okay. Show me. See, I'm learning this too, folks. I don't see gallery view here. I just see view.
So right now, most people have their videos off, but I welcome you to
Maybe
turn
that's why.
your
Okay.
videos on. When people do speak, it will highlight them so that you can see them as well.
Right, so it's just the two of I can only see the two of us, so
That's
I'm
fine.
sorry if you're stuck seeing me, but um, I love the title of this presentation because I really think that co-teaching certainly is magical as far as I'm concerned. But one of the things that Rebecca is going to be attaching is my bio, so I won't get into almost 30 years of my career because I don't want to bore you all. But as she said, I've really worn all most hats. I've been a regular ed teacher. I've taught high school French and Spanish. Um, I've been a special ed teacher for many, many years. And then I went into admin, and I was a special ed director for 17 years. And then, oh, and I see another person. Hello. And then I was also a co-principal and a principal, and I've been an out of district coordinator for special education. And and I also have a child with special needs who's dual exceptional, and she also has um, some psychiatric issues. And so I've got, that experience as well. And so I've sort of worn all of those hats, which I think makes um, really has enriched my experience as an educator, because I know the limitations and I also know the richness of each of those roles. Um, and I got sick of all the politics, and I was so sick of people, going to my superintendents and having them say to me, this is the way we've done it for 30 years. And, you know, that's the way we're going to do it. And so that kind of thing. And so I decided to go into private practice. So I'm currently a special education consultant, and so which I adore. And so what I've done, I do everything currently from working with families who aren't sure if there's something that they have some concerns about their child, to okay, we're going to hearing tomorrow, we need somebody to help us, to um, navigating the whole special education process, to doing, I do a lot of work in the course. I'm very interested in the correctional system. So I do a lot of that. I do evaluations. I also do a lot of work. Districts have asked me to do a lot of work, so I do a lot of PD within districts. And I also support and mentor teachers, either initiated by districts or by teachers who want to learn a little bit more about special education and the legal special ed laws is a real interest of mine. So how and best practice in pedagogy, so they'll come to me and work with me privately sometimes, and that's something else I do as well. So I
So yeah, and that's definitely one of the things that brought me to you is that we, when we first spoke, there was so many directions we could go. As we all know, special ed has such a multitude of areas that no one could ever be, the expert in everything. And this is why I love this space, because we get to explore the different things that we all experience.
and
So,
it's always changing. So
what was that?
and it's always changing.
And
So
it's changing and the laws change, but at the end of the day, what I love about special ed is that we do have a set of requirements
mhm,
that we need to keep track of.
mhm.
And teaching, is not a new idea. However, it does have this type of buzzword, and I don't know if everybody truly understands its purpose and its meaning. So let's talk a little bit about that. So, like, when you are working with a teacher or a district, and at what point do you introduce co-teaching as an option, or how do you work with the teachers to really implement good strategy?
Well, when I started a co-teaching model, this it was way back before. I'm aging myself, but it was way back before anyone had ever really had sort of heard of it. I started in the Newton Public Schools in a sixth grade model with two phenomenal teachers, and I have to say it was the most rewarding experience I've ever had as an educator. And it was a phenomenal experience. We started this model, which is now, and this was about 20, maybe 24, 25 years ago. And we started the model, which is now district wide, pre-K through 12, and in the district. And it's continued on. I'm not thrilled with what I've, quite frankly, seen. It hasn't continued on the way that I would love. But it's, in my opinion, really best practice for all students, not necessarily just special students with special needs. And so, I mean, I could certainly talk about the process for how that started, but I don't want to take up all of the time. But really, what's essential, and I think what really worked best was, I think there was sort of this con- concern that it would water down the curriculum. And what we found very, very quickly was it was the opposite. And this was the sixth grade model, and it took a lot of convincing, a lot. And after the first year, um, we were teaching eighth and ninth grade curriculum. And all of a sudden, we even had the superintendent's students, children in our class, and the next few years. And what I really found to be essential, there were certain sort of essential pieces to it that were key. I mean, there has to be the shared philosophy among the teachers, and um the share ideally, in my opinion, you have to have teachers that have different learning styles, because you also have to model that, because you have to be teaching, it touches on everything. You have to be teaching and modeling multiple intelligences and those kinds of skills, but you have to really be creative. It's an ever evolving way of teaching. So as far as I'm concerned, um it can work for everybody, and I would encourage it for every class. I don't, you know, I don't think I'm not really sure what your question is.
So there's a few things that come to mind based on what you were just saying. First of all, what would be some of the pushbacks? You said it
Um,
was really hard to convince them.
well, again, there was a lot of, okay, so you're going to be watering down the curriculum. This is a highly, highly competitive district. And parents of the students that didn't, this was a this model within the middle school has teams. That's what they're called.
Mhm,
So you have about 65 to 70 kids on a team. So within our, when we did it, we had about, I think I had a caseload of 18 to 20 students on IEPs. And so then the students, the parents of the students that did not have IEP, and then of course there were other kids on 504s. So then the parents of students who were on neither were very, very concerned that their kids wouldn't be as competitive and they'd be behind the eight ball. And that was the majority of the concern.
mhm,
And um, we had to sort of prove that that was not the case. And part of what we did was we developed a co-curriculum in advance, which was a study skills curriculum. And because nobody teaches that anymore, and it's essential, in my opinion. And people say, well, okay, study for a test. And people don't, for example, people don't realize that studying is an active and interactive skill. You don't look at the paper and say, oh, yeah, I studied it. That isn't studying. So, you know, that's essential. So, what we ended up doing was doing really a co curriculum. And so our kids learned the math, science, history, and social studies, but they also learned how to study, and they learned how to be students and how to self-advocate and how what their learning styles were. And um, to be fair, I was pretty busy. Because I was co-teaching all four subjects. I was also teaching Wilson reading. I was doing Learning Center. I was chairing all the meetings. I was doing all the special ed paperwork. I didn't have any preps. This is when I was doing my principal internship, my special ed director internship, and I was also pregnant. So I was a little busy at the time, um, but it was well worth it.
So
Um,
that's definitely one of the feedback that I hear, right? It's so there's to make it effective, you do have to put so much additional planning in. And as we all know, in a perfect world, we would have the same preps and it would be built into the schedule. But I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that that's not always the case. So how do you create this in, was it during the summer? Did you have like it, and you just said you didn't have preps. So how did you get there? I totally agree with one of the comments. Like how did you get a shared philosophy, this group of teachers who sound like they did something that was different? So, like, I want to know a little bit about that. Like, because that does to me sound like magic. Like, where did you find the time to plan and to come together with these individuals to help create this program?
you have, in my opinion, the dedication and the belief in these children, all the children, and the belief in the model has to be paramount. And our poor families didn't see us. it was, I'm being honest. Now, every year it got better because we were refining, each year rather than starting from scratch. The first summer, that's all we did. But we planned probably after school at least 2 to 3 hours every day. Um, every summer we would commit at least a month, and no, we did not get any extra funds for it. Of course, that was, are you kidding me? But what we got in return was, you can't put a dollar on it, you know.
Yeah. Now, so some of the
But I can tell you also,
yes.
I also, it was, the communication is also important beyond the 4 subjects, because I also communicated with the specials teachers, because those accommodations and modifications have to go beyond that, right? Um, and the other thing that I did, which everybody thought I was crazy, and I am, I'll admit it, you have to be a little quirky to be in this business, and that's okay. Um, but it really was worth it, because it was proactive. Um, I communicate. This is when nobody texted then, but email was the thing. I either emailed or called every one of my parents every single day, and sometimes it was just a check-in. Yep, Johnny's doing great today, or whatever. And it was such an investment that was so worth it, because then when there was an issue, you've already developed that rapport and that relationship. Um, and it was great. It was so worth it.
And I will say, especially in the online environment right now, just so you all know, I teach at the high school, I teach math.
Mhm.
And the communication with the kids and the families has been a prime focus.
Yeah.
So while my co-teacher is focusing directly on the curriculum, it allows me to go through and look at grades and to chat with the kids specifically in Zoom
Yes.
or through a different measure just to make sure we're all on the same page. And that has been so effective in this online environment. So I want to know a little bit more though. You said that I'm hearing a lot about what you were able to do, but how did you split the work up? How many people were you working with when you
There,
consider co teaching?
there were 2 other teachers. One taught math and science, and one taught English and social studies. And we had one paraprofessional. Um, and but I can tell you, I mean, I hope he doesn't hear this, but the 3rd year, one of our teachers retired, and when she retired, and this is why this is essential, that you have a team that's really dedicated and that's all on the same page. I mean, and it's great if y'all are different, but you have to be on the same, you have to all be committed, because the, the person that was added to our team had no interest in being on the team, and didn't get it, and didn't want to be on the team. And to be fair, he had an infant. He didn't want to, he had other things to do, and I totally respect that. Um, the program went downhill.
So how do you, because sometimes, you're just kind of thrown together with a person
Yeah,
that you haven't met and you find out your schedule on September 1
yeah.
and the kids are in front of you. So, I know that there's some structures, the parallel, this and that. What made this particular situation for you so effective? Was it the conferencing with the kids? You said relationships. Was it just splitting up the work?
No, I don't think it was splitting up the work, because sometimes it wasn't even. It just wasn't. I mean, but it evened out. But I think it was the dedication. We all believed in it so much. because we always got a new para, let's say, every year.
Mhm.
That person, a lot of them were like, "What the heck is this? And this is different." So we had to sort of train them and get them on board. And some were better than others, and some were better trained than others, quite frankly. But which is okay. Um, Again, it was the people and the dedication. And as I moved on in my career and then went into admin, I was able to really, and even as a consultant now, I go into some classrooms that are quote co-taught, and it breaks my heart because you see, and this I understand why there can be resistance on the admin side, because you're paying, I don't know, at least 60, $70,000 a year for someone who is sitting, if it's not done correctly, and literally watching the class. And what a shame and what a waste of a resource. That is not a
Absolutely.
special education teacher's job.
I think, making sure that the people in the room are all there for the kids, that the kids know that they can go to any one person. And it's funny because the kids start to know who to go to for what,
But
they
they
know if they
know.
need that emotional coax, they know which teacher is going to be a little bit, cushier and things like that. Because we have to remember, while there's personalities between the teachers,
Mhm.
each kid has a personality that sometimes just they don't mesh, right? So there is, while there's theory and books and, a lot of really good research out there, one of the reasons why we landed on the magic, there is this little like intuition piece,
Of
because
course.
there are individuals that I can walk into a room with, and I feel like we could bounce back and forth and both be in the lead and kind of give each other a glance and know exactly what kid we're talking about. And there's others that just hasn't, that's going to take time. Doesn't mean it's not possible, but it takes a lot of time, and it does take time outside of, your little classroom,
Mhm.
and now I think there's so many advantages with the remote learning. Like, I think everybody now is into um the Google Docs, right? It's not this mysterious thing that it was, that some people knew and some didn't get it. We were thrown into a situation where we had to learn.
Mhm.
And that collaboration piece comes a lot simpler. If I know that I can meet with you through Zoom right after I feed my kids, it's better than, honey, I need to leave. I got to go to the coffee shop.
Mhm.
This has normalized this extra work environment. But I think there are a lot of people who feel like it's just, that would spread me way too thin. And so how can we, and this is open to anybody right now, because like I said, we are not the experts. The room is the expert today. How do you effectively co-teach with limited time?
But
Because someone mentioned that it's not just collaboration.
Mhm. But the
So,
other advantage to what you're saying is that it also models the fact that we all got thrown into this, right? As horrific as this pandemic is that it also models for our students the fact that we don't always know what to do, and how do we problem solve, and how do we become flexible, and how do we to say to our students, gee, this went wrong, I'm sorry, I didn't know how to do this. I'm going to work my way through it. And I think that that as educators is extremely important to model for our kids. And this pandemic situation and the remote learning is a great way to do it, because sometimes also, I mean, we're always learning from our kids, right?
mhm.
But some of our students are really good at this stuff. So they can teach us, like one of the best things about co-teaching, especially remotely, in my opinion, because I'm not a tech person, is to model how to work through problems and to say, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. And for a teacher to do that is imperative. Um, and I think the best teachers are the ones that are comfortable doing so.
And and the other thing is knowing each other's strengths.
Mhm,
I'm a data girl. You
mhm,
give me a list, I'm going to put colors and I'm going to make it pretty because it makes me feel better. And if somebody can see it and understand it, that's amazing. So, like, in that situation where we're trying to figure out strengths and the weaknesses, one of my uh, a co-teaching relationship, because it is kind of, it's a relationship.
oh yeah.
So the person I worked with my second year I taught, she was the idea girl. She would come up with this massive plan and I would just be like, got it. And I would just find a way to do the kind of minutia and kind of the directing of how we were going to make that work with our combined 80 some kids. And the projects we did, we were able to do because while kids were presenting, I could be working with the kids who needed some extra support. It allowed us to conference. I think the most powerful thing in math, in language arts, in science, when kids can get that attention, one, they feel cared for and listened to, which is such an important part of the learning process.
Yeah.
But also, you get so much information when you can talk to the kid and hear what they're thinking.
Mhm,
I think the writing workshop
mhm,
model works amazingly. I've
mhm,
tried to do it as the only person in the room, and it's not, sometimes you're just so stressed out to see if the other kid is doing what they need to do and focus on this, that you can't be truly present
mhm,
with the kids.
mhm,
Um and and whether that's a small group or one on one, and then also being able to switch roles.
mhm.
So maybe I'm more comfortable with the conferencing in the beginning, but then we work together and then we switch so that the kids don't always see um the same person doing the same things.
And
I think
the kids should never, and this is imperative, the kids should never, I mean, should always see, whether it's remotely or in the classroom, every person, every adult in that classroom should be seen as an equal. I don't think any one of my students ever knew that I was a special educator, and that was intentional on our part. Um, because I've seen in my roles as a consultant now, people think of a lot of the kids think of the special educators as lesser than the regular educators. And what a shame that is. As do other faculty members.
Yeah. So I will say we have someone in the room who has put a lot of information together. I'm going to share this quickly on my screen. The power of social media. So I was on some co-teaching site, and when I saw this, I said, "This is just fabulous." So, Wendy, I see that you've been talking in the chat. There's a book here, but there's a lot of these things. I'm so happy to see this in like one place because I think I've seen this in different, all the different models. So if you don't mind jumping in, can you tell us a little bit more about all these resources that you put together?
Sure. Sorry, I am chatty, but I'm very, very passionate about this. So
It's
thank you
wonderful.
to both of you, Rebecca and Emily, for what you're doing. This is, yeah, if I see co-teaching, I'm on it. Yeah, that's just a Padlet like you saw, and it's got resources, templates, examples, articles, books. So people are welcome to check it out. I use it when I do my professional development training, but there's a lot of resources there for you.
So, I want to pull this up again because I know, and somebody had asked about the different models. Um, it is, you have the one teach, one support, the parallel, alternative when you kind of take turns,
The
station,
alternative is actually large group, small group.
large group and small
So
group.
yeah,
Okay.
one teach, one support would be, when it first started, it was one teach, one support. Then Lynn Cook and Marilyn Friend broke it to one teach, one support, and one teach, one observe. But I'm still very old school.
Okay.
So just like Emily said, start long time ago, you kind of go with that. And that's where you have a lead. One is in the lead, but both of them can take those roles.
Okay.
Parallels, like you were talking about, the two groups, and then the students can either just stay with one of the co-teachers, or they could go flip flop those two. Then you have stations where they're in small groups rotating around, they're all getting it. Team teaching, where we're sharing the stage.
Right. And, I think there's sometimes it's, you kind of start with one thing, and then as the class goes, you end up being like, hey, we need to switch this off. And a lot of times, I remember as a new teacher, I wanted to know, okay, am I doing what page of my education book, what model is this? And sometimes you just got to go with the flow and realize that even if you had planned to do a parallel and you're just having, a certain a situation, that flexibility is so huge, and you can't do that unless you are comfortable with the person you're working with. Because I've also been in relationships where, I was afraid to say something to step on their toes, and you're doing that little dance and you're trying to figure out, like I kind of would have done that differently, because teaching is so emotional. We get so invested, and developing those relationships, I think that there needs to be a little bit more focus to allow individuals to build that relationship. And then when kids know immediately if you get along or if you don't. Um, so I think that it's, when it's not working out, the adults in the room have to figure out a way to kind of fake it till you make it. Um,
There's
so,
another model too that I used to use that I found very, very helpful, was, or I've used in the past, where and kids love it because you got to have a sense of humor when you teach. We all know that. But if you're not sort of presenting, okay, let's say you're not presenting, but if you sit down in one of the seats, and if, because sometimes when you're presenting or you're teaching, sometimes you think that everybody gets it, and you're presenting and everything's cool and everybody gets it, but in reality people have no clue what you're talking about, or you're going too quickly or too slowly, or they don't know what page you're on or whatever. Sometimes it really helps to play the role of student. And so all three of the teachers, well, the other two teachers with whom I worked, and I are thespians by nature. So, I mean, we would often, be like, Mrs. So-and-so, I'm really confused here. Can you just slow down for a second? So are you just saying that Socrates would, or whatever? And that, so many kids were so relieved, because it, a lot of times you'd ask questions that they were thinking, or like, wait, are we on page for whatever, because I have no clue what page we're on, or that kind of thing. And it sort of took the mystery out of it for a lot of kids. And you could be totally goofy about it, and or serious, depending on what you need to do.
That has been so essential in the Zoom
Yep.
education environment, because there's this, I think we're getting used to it, but like to ask questions or how to kind of get the kids to ask questions and to kind of participate, especially in the high school, or if it's in the lower elementary, it's, kind of modeling when it's okay to show your cat and when it's not. um, so it's been, I think when they can see a teacher, I think the modeling piece of that becomes so important, whether it's an actual lesson,
Mhm.
when they see you doing the work that they're being asked to do, it gives legitimacy to what they don't just feel like you're giving busy work.
Mhm.
um and yeah, I don't know if there's a magic recipe, um but I do know that there's a lot of really good ways to make sure that you're holding each other accountable, and always with the students in mind. um I know just being able to pick and choose the kids that you have those strong relationships with, and to always come back and to get each other on the same page, because as much as we try, you can't see everything all the time. We'd like to think that we know every nook and cranny, but we are stronger together. I believe that in so many ways. um, and not for anything else, it's nice to have someone when we can actually trust to leave with the class when to use the bathroom. No, I kid, but teachers are spread so thin, and when you're trying to do, you don't have to be this everything to everyone. I think this is going to be so essential for our teachers to share the load, one, for our own mental health, but also for the kids. We're going to see different types of behaviors and different types of things once we all get back to a more consistent schedule. And I guess a question that comes to mind, and I'll open this up to the floor. How do you justify co-teaching when it comes down to finances, right? So, well, we have this many spots, if there's going to be another, God forbid, a cut, how can we as educators, knowing that this is best practice, advocate for ourselves when we know co-teaching is a strong model?
Well, I can tell you that from my own experience, well, two things. One is going back to what you were saying earlier. Um, Part of our planning and our collaboration periods was always dedicated to the students and what students we were concerned about. And okay, we have a field, for example, we don't do this now, but we have a field trip coming up. How is so and so going to handle this? What are we, about whom are we worried? How are we going to handle this, that, and the other? So it was always dedicated to the kids too. It wasn't just the material. And that relates to social emotional needs as well. And I think that's essential. But I think, in my opinion, every student, at least in my experience, every student that was entering, there were two things going on, because one huge issue that everybody was freaking out about was there was this new term that everybody was talking about, and it was NVLD. And people were in coming, and they were all, this group of this cohort was coming from a sub-separate program. And so we were like, hey, we have an idea. We'll solve that financial issue and we'll take them, bring them all to us. We'll take them on our team. Okay.
Mhm.
And that was how we took it. So one way to answer that is, okay, fine. We will save the district money because then we're reducing out of district programming and the need for sub-separate. Because if it's done correctly, this is a less restrictive environment, which is more appropriate for most students, and B, it's saving the district money. So in my opinion, if it's done correctly, it's saving money. Now, if one of the teachers is sitting around passing out papers, it's a waste of money. So if it's done correctly, it's saving money.
So there was a question in the chat that, how do you co-teach effectively when you're in the same Zoom meeting with different tech? Sometimes in secondary math, a special ed teacher gets put in that maybe doesn't have a math background, but has the special ed cert. So how can you do that effectively? I don't know, Wendy on the iPhone, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that a little bit more. Um,
I had to figure out how to get it unmuted.
You did it. Congratulations.
All through like 4 screens. I'm a secondary math teacher. Right now I'm working with sophomores. I have about 175 kids in, like 120 that show up all the time.
Sure.
And in an online environment, it's 100% online. And I have a co-teacher who has an elementary school background and has been hired by the high school. He has done academic support classes. And I think he's been worked with more of the severe and profound kids. I know he's been a co-teacher for a couple years in more of the gen ed classes, but like I teach from my iPad. So I join the Google Meet with my iPad, and that's where I give my notes and do my examples. And I don't know how to share that with somebody. Plus, there's just the idea that I'm teaching, he'll ask me questions about the math after the lesson. So he doesn't feel comfortable with the content enough, I think, to teach it. And so I just don't know, like, as you talk about saving versus wasting money, he's there and he offers office hours for the students who have the requirement, as well as students who don't. There are students that don't have a requirement that've gone to his office hours for tutoring and things, but it just doesn't. I think
like it's becoming more work for you, or like you're feeling like it's somebody else in the room to kind of train and teach, is what I'm kind of hearing.
It is my intention, but like this has been my fiefdom for 20 years, and now you put somebody in it, and that isn't, I realize, the best analogy, but for a long time teaching was a very, like you said, a very personal and emotional thing. This is my relationship with the kids. This is my domain. And so now I have another adult in, and I'm sure that most of you are aware of how the dynamics change when there's another adult in the room. As soon as another observer comes in, the kids change their behavior. And it's just, I just don't know what to do. Like, we talk about it, but like this idea of planning together, I don't know it ever really occurred to me that that's what we should be doing. Like, I was just given him in August, and he was given me in August, and now we're this thing. And I don't know that we know what to do with each other.
And you haven't really had time to, be in the same room and you're all online, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, some things that come to mind, and like I said, not the expert, but hopefully, and something I say clicks. But, having, even when he does have questions about the content, it's very likely that another kid in the room is having those same thoughts. And so what Emily kind of shared about being modeling how to, ask good questions, and more of those study skill type things are definitely important. And I know, being a math content specialist, sometimes we get really kind of we have a procedure and, how people think about studying for math, it definitely differs. So I'm assuming with a special ed background, knowing the profiles of the kids in the room, that might be a strength. And unfortunately, it may take just stumbling through this next year and hopefully being able to, get to know each other a little bit more and then continuing to build that. My hope would be that you could continue to kind of build the momentum versus having them switch co-teachers to every different room every year and you never get that chance to learn what each other's strengths are.
Rebecca, may I jump in?
Absolutely.
So Wendy, I'm the other Wendy. So that's fun. One of the things that I mentioned in the chat too, on the Padlet, you'll find something called the Share Worksheet that Dr. Lisa Deeker and I published quite a few years ago. It's really popular and it's been in a lot of different co-teaching books. You might want to start with that because it's got just 2 pages, super easy. You fill it out separately from your partner. And each of you would talk about what your expectations, your concerns, what your hopes are for the next year. But my favorite part is the gold, which is really the second page, or if you have a hard copy, it's the back page. And it's where you write your expectations and your pet peeves. So you might write my expectations for homework, for class participation, for planning, for any of those things. And then your partner is doing the same thing. So as Rebecca already mentioned, you're both coming with different strengths. And while math may not be your partner's strength, you might find that your partner actually has a lot of things that he can bring to the relationship. And that first year, it's not going to be algebra 2. It'll be whatever the accommodations, modifications, UDL, but maybe he's really organized. Maybe he's nervous right now because like you said, it's your fiefdom. You've had it for a while, but I would suggest you maybe start with doing the Share Worksheet so you can talk really upfront. Thank you for that. You can, Rebecca, for pulling that up. So you can talk to one another about what you're looking for here. And maybe he can take some roles like giving directions, like working in the breakout rooms, like doing the warm up, anything that's not direct instruction. Because understandably, you probably want to make sure he's not going to give any math instruction that's not accurate. So my 2 cents.
And also, if I may, I've been exactly in the position that the gentleman you're talking about is in, because math is not my forte. And the thought, and I can remember thinking, how on earth am I going to teach this math? Because it's just not, especially like with the geometry, anything visual spatial, I'm really poor at. And so, and I didn't want to teach it incorrectly. So what we decided to do was, it was great because most of my students needed a lot of preview, as did I. So with the preview piece, that we did with the teacher all together. So that helped me pre-learn the material. And so I really did a lot of the preview and the review. So I would do the warm-ups with the kids, and then I did the review before the quizzes and tests or that kind of thing. I focused a lot on making accommodations when the tests needed to be, different versions of tests needed to be done, that kind of thing. And I really focused on the math, on the strategies and how to break down the material into different strategies, which also boosted my confidence as a math learner. Quite frankly, I learned a lot. And I was very open with the kids. Sometimes I remember saying to one student, I don't know why you flip the reciprocal with the fraction, but you just do. If you want to know why, you've got to ask Miss So-and-so, but that's what you do. And, they laughed and whatever, but, we all have different strengths, and I think that's okay to share. But I really focused on the strategies and rather than the actual content. And that was very, very effective, doing the preview and the review and the strategies with those with my kids. Because I'm not a math person.
So speaking of math, we will be having a talk on math, I believe March 3rd. Believe it or not, we are getting scheduled all the way out into May at this point, which is super exciting. So those of you who are my math folks in the room, I hope that you will and kind of come back. We're going to be talking about the language of math and that relationship that is so important to build when kids don't like math, and how we can kind of navigate around that. I will make the Padlet available. I can make the chat available as well. There's been a lot of really good discussion in the chat, and I love that. I love when you all can ask your questions and get answers. That's really what I'm hoping that this community will become, and will maintain itself in that way. This is being recorded. I feel like we had more of a conversation today. There's definitely, I'm already thinking of some other topics like the differentiation and what that actually is. All of the upcoming shows are found on the Eventbrite. I will put that in the chat. So feel free to register for many and all. A session on UDL would be amazing. And so I feel like there's so much more that we could really get to talking about, but I want to make sure that you have our information. Emily was kind enough to share her direct contact. That's her email as well as her cell phone. I also have my information there at the bottom. Those of you who have ideas for other topics or things that you feel like we could have addressed in a different way, I welcome all of that. This is not about me. This is about the collective. I really believe that. I just happen to be able to make some graphics on Canva, and that is my strategy. The rest of it is all about the people that are here.
Oh, do you want to mention the
There's so
bio
many books. I want to read them all.
Do you want to
Go
mention
ahead.
the bio too?
Yep. The bio was put at the top of the chat. So that will be in, I'll make sure to save the chat and make sure that that gets out as well. So feel free to reach out to us that way. Next week, we will be with Jennifer Sullivan, talking about the transition to college, specifically for diverse learners and their families. I've been able to be in several and different chats with her. And so if you know of any colleagues, especially our school psychologists in the room, our counselors, that, and even families, she's a wealth of information that I would love to connect you to. But before we officially wrap up, is there any last words or things of advice that you have for the crew, Emily?
No, just to thank you for the opportunity. I hope it was helpful to folks. Please do reach out. I'm always, we're all in this together and lifelong learners, and I'm open to strategies and suggestions, and hope that I can be a resource to anybody as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Awesome. And thank you for all of your time and preparation and friendship. I feel like the minute we kind of started to talk, I feel like there was a mutual understanding. And it's really nice to be with like-minded individuals who truly care. We've laughed together, we've cried together, and I hope that this is a continuation of collaboration.
Absolutely.
So thank you all. Feel free to stay and ask questions. And I hope to see you all in the future. Spread the word. We are exceptional circumstances for exceptional learners. And I appreciate your time. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you.